Well, good morning, everybody. I wanted to try to bring you an encouraging word this morning from Nehemiah chapter 1. I love the story of Nehemiah, and because it's a great story of revival and renewal among God's people. If you've never read that story, I would encourage you to do so as you get opportunity, because it will truly bless your heart as you read the story of how one man got a burden for God's people. And this morning, as I was reading in Nehemiah, the early verses of the book, I noticed that Nehemiah had received the bad news that the people of God were in distress. Some people, even one of his brothers, came to where Nehemiah was, and Nehemiah was the king's cupbearer at the time. And some visitors came, and as Nehemiah had opportunity, he asked them. He said, "How are the people of God? How is Jerusalem? How are things back home?" And they gave him some bad news. They said they're in distress. The walls are torn down. The gates are burned. The city is just all but in ruins. And so Nehemiah, he got a burden for the situation back home. Have you ever found yourself in that situation? Have you ever found yourself, maybe even this week, you've received some bad news? Or perhaps today you might even receive some bad news. I know there's been times in all of our lives when we've just had a terrible day as far as bad news coming our way. Tragedy strikes every family. Things happen in people's lives, and it does cause pain. So in those times, I wanted to try to encourage you to look at what Nehemiah did and do what he did. It says here in verse number 4, it says, "So it was," Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 4, "So it was when I heard these words that I sat down and wept and mourned for many days." He was so burdened about what he'd heard. He said, "I was fasting and praying before the God of heaven, and I said, I pray, Lord God of heaven, O great and awesome God." Nehemiah did the thing that you and I must do on the days when we receive bad news. He went to God and he said, "Father, I need you in this situation." Folks, that's all we can do. Whenever we are up against things that are way bigger than us, when we're up against things that we just can't control, Nehemiah had no control over what was going on back home. And when we find ourselves in those situations, we have one or two things that we could do. We could either get mad and go away from God, and we could just sink into a mindset of negativity and depression, or we can fall on our face before God and we can just cry out to him, asking him to intervene on our behalf. That's what Nehemiah did. What a great example that is to us today. I hope that you'll do that. Whatever bad news you may have just received, God is way bigger than that problem. God is way bigger than that burden. And so I encourage you, feel the burden and then feel the blessing as you bow before the Lord today. Hope you have a wonderful day. I'll talk to you soon.